Greetings, everyone. My name is Jonathan Bailey, and I'm from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. Happy Thursday, September 13th, day after the iPhone announcement, where everyone went meh. Today I want to talk about a subject that means a great deal to me, something I'm very passionate about, and that is statistics, and specifically I want to take one subject I'm passionate about, statistics and data, and combine it with another subject I'm passionate about, which is copyright. So, yeah, this is going to probably put you to sleep. Boring topic, I know, I expect like 0 views on YouTube with this, but I'm doing this for me. And frankly, the view count doesn't really matter. So anyways, I'm a very, very data-driven, kind of a data-obsessed person. And to give a quick example of that, every time a hurricane is coming toward my native New Orleans, which is like, all the time, I'm listening to the weathermen, I'm hearing what they're saying, I'm reading some bloggers, but mostly I'm spending my time on the NHC website looking at the data they have, the estimated storm surge projections, the wind forecast, the tracks they have, all this stuff. I'm combining all the data they have, and I'm making some very difficult decisions, literally life and death decisions. I mean, I stayed for Hurricane Isaac. What if I had been wrong? What if, the storm surge projections had been wrong and my area had flooded deeply? I would have been pretty much stranded without any hope of escape because there were so many of us here. How are we going to get out? I based my decisions based upon what the NHC said, what actual data on the storm was, and information I had from the time I worked at the Army Corps of Engineers locally. Very interesting job. Worked there for about 6 weeks. Got to handle a lot of important documents without being an important person whatsoever. So very interesting environment. Maybe I'll talk more about that later if there's any interest at all. Somehow I doubt it. But anyways, so I love statistics. I obsess over it. I'm a data-driven person. That's something I've tried to bring in the copyright. But as most people who deal with copyright know, copyright is something that really resists data. I mean, good example of this. If you share a song on a BitTorrent network, you share a movie on a BitTorrent network, how much harm have you done to that original work? How much hurt have you applied to it, if any? How much have you done? And the answer is you don't know. No one knows. And the reason is we can't roll back time and have you not do the infringement. And then we have to answer the question, can we take your infringement in isolation, or do we have to kill all file sharing and see how much better the movie does or how worse it does or whatever? We can't do that. We can't just simply roll it back and try a different scenario. So there's very little real data in this, and this is why copyright law has statutory damages, because so little hard, fast data is available on this. But there are some things we can count. And as I mentioned yesterday, I had an issue with statistics on the site, and I got to do this carefully because I don't want to be, can you get your statistics wrong? How could you do that? I don't want to be that guy. Because A, as I'm going to illustrate quite articulately, I hope, no one's perfect on this. Everyone makes mistakes, everyone has problems. And the other reason is that guy's kind of a douche, and I don't want to be a douche. Enough people call me a douche anyways, I don't need to actually be one. So anyways, so without naming names or calling people out or starting a fight, I want to talk about what actually happened. What it dealt with was a claim about false DMCA notices or bad DMCA notices. And a site, once again, not naming names, made the claim that, according to Google, 37% of all DMCA notices were false. And that claim made my eyes pop when I saw it. And it's a claim they've actually repeated a lot on their site. And I clicked through, and I then immediately had actually technically 3 problems, but we'll just say 2 for now, with the way that the data was presented. One, it was very outdated information. It was in a report that Google had submitted regarding legislation in 2009. Anyone who knows anything about Google's DMCA process knows that a lot changed between 2009 and 2012. And I also know that there's more outdated and more up-to-date information today. You can go to the Google Transparency Report. They've got all this glorious data. People like me are just going crazy over this data. It's all there, and they include statistics that are very, very relevant to what they're trying to say and paint a very, very different picture, I might add. And the second reason is because the way they were presenting it, they were talking exclusively about taking down works illegally, sending DMCA notices against works that are non-infringing. And that's a very, very bad thing. I disagree with it completely. That's what they were talking about. But the Google statistic included, in fact, was primarily about people with provided incomplete DMCA notices. So if you forgot to sign your name, you didn't swear under penalty of perjury, you made technical errors in submitting the DMCA notice, which in 2009 was very easy because Google standards were very high and you could only submit by fax, and there were all these problems. Then you were in that percent, and I probably have a couple in that list as well, just because, you know, I didn't submit my first few to Google were kind of botched. So what I was hitting at here was that the way they were presenting it was kind of misleading, maybe unintentionally, and also, unfortunately, the information was way out of date. Well, he hit back. Well, I didn't say hit back. It wasn't really an argument. It was more of a discussion about statistics, and pointed out something quite correctly. I pointed to the Google FAQ and the Google Transparency Report, which shows that 97% of URLs are processed. And he pointed out quite correctly that it's at least somewhat of an apples to oranges comparison, because Google now tracks notices by URLs, not pieces of paper. Previously, they would do it by pieces of paper handed to them. It was really easy to do when things were being faxed. But now that things are being sent by form and things are being sent via this back end, it's a much more difficult thing to do. So by notice, now they're doing it by URL. So as he put it, it's possible that both things are true. 37% of all DMCA notices submitted have problems, but 97% of URLs are okay, and that's entirely possibly true. Now, that doesn't actually address my issues with their data, namely the improper context and the fact they are still using outdated data and they're not indicating that it is so out of date and that things have changed. I mean, I think they're really burying a lot of very crucial information about that because it's such an eye-popping statistic and because it helps them make a point. But that's not the issue. But he was right. I made an error with that, and it was something worth addressing. And I think personally, for example, URLs are a much better way of tracking this issue, because if I send a DMCA notice with 10,000 URLs, and one of them is a bad URL, one of them it was a mispaste, I included something incorrectly, or a site went down, does that mean the entire DMCA notice is invalid? Well, if you're just tracking notices, yes it is. But it's also 99.99% accurate. And is it really fair to condemn an entire notice because of one error if there's 99.99% accuracy? I think URLs are a much more valid way of determining how many notices and takedowns are accurate. And besides, the way I've always looked at a DMCA notice is if I send 10 URLs on a sheet, I'm looking for 10 takedowns. I'm not looking for one takedown 10 times. But that's just been my take on it. But honestly, he was right. They changed the metric, and they changed the metric because they changed the way they were handling DMCA notices. And though I honestly believe Google agrees with me that URLs are a better way of tracking this issue because that's how they present their data, it's a point. And that's the problem with statistics. Is it true that in 2009, 37% of all notices sent to Google were invalid for one reason or other? Yes. Is it true that in the latter half of 2011, the latest data available from Google, that 97% of the URLs were at least found accurate enough to be removed from the Google search engine? And once again, neither of these claiming the actual veracity of the notice, just noticing the problems with the URLs and with the content itself, filtering out obvious problems, if you will. Yes, that is true too. And that's the thing. Those two data points combined actually give you a pretty good picture of things, or at least a better one than either data point alone. And the problem is this: when you go around and people are throwing out 1 or 2 data points on copyright for whatever reason, they're probably just telling you part of the story. And that's true in anything, but it's especially true in copyright where data is so scarce. They're probably just telling you a part of the story, and they're probably doing it at least somewhat intentionally. Everyone makes mistakes, but you have to be wary of that. So what I try to do with PT, and admittedly, once again, as obvious from this conversation, I'm not 100% perfect, but I do try to A, provide context for all the data that I use, and B, I try to provide as much data as I can. And that's the two things that I think I try to do, going back to the truth, resist simplicity, and all that stuff I talked about yesterday that no one watched, because I guess everyone was so stoked about the taller iPhone. But whatever. The point to it all is, and I'm way over on time, but the point I was trying to say here is statistics are complicated, they're fungible, and you can make them say whatever you want. That's why it's important to look for the context, think for yourself, get behind the numbers, and ask some difficult questions no matter where you're getting from, whether it's RIAA, whether it's an anti-copyright site, whether it's a politician, or even if it's me. Figure it out. get behind the scenes, ask some tough questions. That's all I'm saying. So until next time, this is Jonathan Bailey, signing off.